to our final episode of Investigation Exodus. We've been digging deeper into the Exodus story. We took you back in time to see what really happened. Our final guest is Joshua. He took over as leader of the Israelites after Moses died. It was Joshua who took the Israelites into the Promised Land across the Jordan River. Our storyteller, Turner Page, shares with us the final part of our story. Over to you, Turner.
Hello, I'm Turner Page. Our story has taken us from a Hebrew baby in a basket rescued by an Egyptian princess to Moses being called by God from a burning bush. We experienced the 10 plagues God sent on Egypt to convince the Pharaoh to let God's people go. Then the Israelites came safely through the waters of the Red Sea into the wilderness, where God provided food, manna and quail, and even water from a rock. We heard about Moses spending time with God on Mount Sinai, where he received the 10 Commandments, while the Israelites, led by his brother Aaron, celebrated around a golden calf. There was more to the story we didn't have time to hear, like the building of the tabernacle, which was like a church. It was made from instructions given by God. It was something that could be put up and taken down as the people continued their journey. They saw it as the place God lived among them. There were also poisonous snakes at a time when the people once again struggled to be faithful. God saved them from themselves, as God always does. Moses brought the people to the edge of the Jordan River. From there, the Promised Land could be seen. God showed Moses all the land the people would live in. But Moses would not enter the Promised Land. Joshua was chosen to become leader when Moses died, and it was Joshua who took the people across the Jordan River. As the people crossed the river, water was again moved to make a way. Another miracle to remind the people God was with them. There were many battles with the people who already lived in the land. God gave the Israelites victory in these battles so they could settle in the land. It was Joshua who led the battle of Jericho, you may have heard about. The walls of the city fell down when Joshua followed God's instructions. The exodus from Egypt is now over. The people are in the Promised Land. The journey at an end, but the work of being faithful to God continued. Joshua led the people well, and he reminded them of how God had been and continued to be faithful to the people. Joshua made a new covenant between God and the people, a promise that both would be faithful to the other. And so the story continues in the Promised Land. God is still with God's people to this day.
Our final guest is Joshua. As the leader who took the Israelites into the Promised Land, Joshua can tell us about how the Exodus journey ended. Thank you for being with us today, Joshua. I understand from my research that you were the only person who left Egypt and actually entered the Promised Land. Is this true?
Yes, I was quite young, but after 40 years wandering in the wilderness, a tough life, all of those who left Egypt were gone, even Moses. Not only did I need to be a leader, but I needed to make sure the people didn't forget the things that God had done for our people on the journey. To make sure the people heard the stories of all the miracles and the hope God gave us.
What do you remember most about the journey?
What I will always remember the most is God's faithfulness. No matter what happened, God was always there. God always provided what we needed, even when we, the people, were not faithful to God. But if you want to know what event I remember the most, that was probably walking through the Red Sea. It was an awesome sight. And the feeling of walking through a big tunnel with walls of water is something I will never forget. The fact that God piled up the water again as I led the people across the Jordan River into the Promised Land helped me feel some closure on the journey. When we went through the sea, we truly became free. When we crossed the river, we were truly in the Promised Land.
How does it feel to be at the end of the journey?
Well, we may be in the promised land, but the journey isn't really over. We still need to get settled into the land, and we have to take over from all the people who already live in the land. There will be many battles to fight, and many more times we will need to remain faithful to God, especially when that is difficult to do. I want to make sure that people remember where we came from and who helped us get there. Sometimes I think that remembering God will be harder now than we have our own home and our own land.
What is your hope for your people?
I hope that now that we are in the promised land, we can find ways to remember who and whose we are. God brought us out of Egypt, God brought us through the wilderness, and God gave us rules and commandments to live by, so we could live good, faithful, and full lives. I hope we will remember where we came from and how we came to be here and why. I'll lead us as faithfully as I am able. I know that God will guide me so that I can guide the people. It will take work, and we will need to keep reminding ourselves of the story of how God is with us.
The Israelites are lucky to have you lead them. How are you going to help your people do all this?
When the time is right, I will gather all the people once again. I will tell them the whole story, we will celebrate our journey, and we will recommit ourselves to God. We made a covenant with God in the wilderness. We will make a new covenant, a new commitment to God in the promised land. And this will lead to an everlasting relationship between God and God's people. This is my prayer.
Thank you, Joshua. This has clearly been a life-changing experience for you and your people. Miracles and hope abounded. They still continue. May you and your people live long in the promised land within the love and care of God. That ends our investigation into the Exodus story. The Israelite people are now in the promised land. Their story continues, and we can all learn from it too. May we all remember we are God's children, loved by God and part of the covenant of faithfulness. As we end this series, I want to say thank you to all those who helped make it happen. To those who brought our biblical characters to life, those who made sure we had costuming, and a special thank you to Liam Cox, who put all of these ideas together in a way that I never imagined might happen. So thank you, Liam. Without you, it wouldn't have happened. For Investigation Exodus, this is Sandy Rhodes. Thanks for joining us on the journey.